Hey, welcome to the Votary podcast. We're a team of filmmakers based in New England who are passionate about storytelling. We talk about the impact that stories have in every part of our lives, from business to culture and everything in between. Thanks for joining us.
YouTube video when it's like super meta like that. He's like, okay, well, we don't know what to do the rest of the video. What should we do? He's like, maybe we do that shot over there. And they cut to that shot and they're like, okay, now what?
Well, welcome to Luke.
Welcome to Luke's podcast.
First podcast, right?
Yeah, first one.
Luke is our special new team member, amazing senior filmmaker here at Votary Film.
Special new
Special. Special.
Thanks, guys.
And first time on the podcast, so welcome. So
Yeah, thanks.
Pretty awesome to have you.
Yeah, glad to be here finally.
So for context, what are we talking about?
You know what we're talking about.
I'm saying we for the audience.
Nomadland.
Today we're talking about the new 2020 movie / documentary that won the Best Picture at the Oscars, but it's relevant besides that.
/ documentary. Unpack that a little bit.
Well, first off, do you guys think that
we'll get into it.
Do you guys think that it deserves Best Picture?
Oh, good question.
Should we go around and say yes and no? Because I'll say yes and no.
I need some comparisons.
Yes and no?
No, I meant to say yes.
I'm struggling for comparisons to say whether it should take.
Yeah, I think the
Picture.
problem is there just wasn't enough films in 2020 to compare it to.
Right.
I didn't see enough of the other films as well to really make a judgment.
We're going to look up 2020 films.
I know
Is it a good film? Did I like it?
Well, that's more important, but I was just curious if you guys are like, had any strong opinions about the Oscars. I don't tend to have super strong opinions either way. Sometimes I'll go, oh, that one?
I mean, it's certainly political, but it is a pretty good reference for, what happened that year in terms of movies, I think.
Yeah.
Wait, what do you mean political? The film or
No, I mean
Oscars?
how the Oscars
yeah.
and how they how they even give the awards.
My opinion, since you asked for it, is that the Oscars have gotten less and less relevant and less enjoyable to watch the more political they've gotten.
Snap.
And Cody was just telling me that something like 100 million people used to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
And then last year set the record for least watched at something like, I think he said 30 million or 20 something million. And then this year was less than 10 million.
Wow.
So it's
9 million.
It's truly fallen off a cliff.
Wow.
So I'm going through the 2020 movies right now, and I have watched 2 of them.
Wow.
The first one was I Care a Lot.
It comes
Another
up in
one's Nomadland.
comes up in every podcast.
Tenet?
Oh, Tenet.
Oh yeah, we got it somehow.
Obviously,
Those
it's going to
two-
come up. It's going to
those
come up
two always
sometime.
come up.
Tenet, I Care a Lot, and Nomadland. And wait, no, didn't watch that one. I was like King of Staten Island. I didn't watch it. I saw like a scene.
You wanted to watch it.
I wanted to watch it.
that
That's
was
the
up
only
for
one
Best
I
Picture?
wanted.
Sometimes that happens to me too. I'm like,
like,
I know.
I've seen that. No, I just wanted to see
I
it.
really do want to see it.
King of Staten Island was in the running for Best Picture?
No, I was just looking
Oh.
up a list of what came out in 2020 because I'm thinking, what can I even compare this to?
Yeah.
I'm like, in my head, I'm like, yeah, I think it deserves to win, or it deserved to win. Because like Parasite, I remember liking it, but being like, Best Picture. Oh, okay. I wasn't
Really?
like, upset by it, but I thought it was just good. I didn't think it was like, wow, it just swept everything. It won everything. And I was like, I liked it, but I was surprised by that. I don't know.
There are definitely years where it feels like the winner is like, yes, that
Right.
clearly that defined that year a
Like
little
Return
bit,
of the King.
and everyone was
Also
Yeah.
took over everything.
pretty much. But yeah, other years like Nomadland I thought it was a really great film, but it was like wasn't very relevant necessarily. Like I don't think a lot of people saw it, and so just the fact that it gets Best Picture overall feels a little bit weird. Like it feels detached from anything, kind of.
But if you look at the nominees, and go ahead, I'm just looking at them.
Oh, just I was just gonna jump in on you saying it being detached. I think you're right. It is, but one area where I did think it was kind of interesting and relevant is, I've maybe this is just me, but I've been paying close attention to how hard 2020 was on especially the elderly. There's a lot of elderly died, and a lot lost friends.
Yeah.
And many were gripped with fear, and some still are, that they literally wouldn't leave their home for a year.
Oh,
They
yeah.
were
Absolutely.
trapped in nursing homes away from their
Right.
families. Yeah,
Right.
that's very true.
So, like, from that perspective, it's the idea of the importance and relevance and value of the elderly in our society has been front and center.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was interesting from that perspective.
Yeah, actually, now I think about that, that's definitely relevant.
You mentioned that when that was one of the only things you mentioned, Jamin, when this movie came up, is you felt like it was about that, like it had a theme of sort of like remember our elders, remember.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to it, and I feel like I can't put it into a sentence, very well. But I think that there's, just a lot. There's like a culture right now in the Western world that is so celebratory of youth. I mean, that's classic, right? But like the youth is the future, and so everyone's just looking at, how can we target the millennials? How can we target Gen Z? Like, how can we get their attention?
Yeah.
And more we're just so focused, and we forget and just disregard anyone who's elderly. And I think that even like Jed was saying, more so in 2020, as like we're siloed into our houses and less interaction, like that was especially like relevant for the elderly, because I mean, both of my mothers are alive, but I feel like we need to cut. One of my grandmas is alive, and she's in a nursing home, basically. And she had to be completely isolated, no contact with family. And then my wife's grandmother is living on her own, but she was in her house for the entire year and didn't allow anyone to come visit her except to drop groceries off on her porch.
Yeah.
And that's just like pretty intense. But I think that there's a loss that we have, that we've lost an honor and respect for the elderly. When you look at older generations, there was like families would live together, and the older generation, the grandparents, would be the ones that taught. They would be the ones that held the most honor and respect in the family, and they would teach, and the grandkids would go to them for help and for support and
Wisdom.
that's the word I was missing. Wisdom and knowledge. And
Yeah.
That's how it still is in a lot of cultures around the world as well.
other cultures have a much better grasp on it still, but I feel like that's one of the biggest things that we don't talk about and don't even acknowledge as a problem in some ways.
Yeah.
I think our culture is a culture of ambition in America, and so the cultures that are keeping that alive in America are usually not from America initially. They're bringing that culture and making it stand out amongst us in America. Or when you go travel to Italy or somewhere else where you're like, wow, everyone lives together, and they talk, they talk to their grandparents all the time about their problems, and like obviously that's still relevant for a lot of people in America, but I don't know if it's like you said, like we sort of worship the youth, or just like the accomplishment that you can have in America, to the point where if you are retired or you are just kind of done climbing, then we just go, because the whole like nursing home thing, I mean, that's been a problem for 2020 brought it out, but it's like, I mean, that's something that I've been thinking about and passionate about for a long time. I think seeing like my old grandparents who were like, my grandfather lived to be 101.
Wow.
And he was, was in a nursing home, and he luckily still had his wits about him and everything. But going to visit him, I was just like, man, this is not the same as like going and having espresso and everything with him in his Worcester apartment, and like how lively everything was. It's just
crazy.
like, I remember just being like wrecked by that when I was younger, and I was like, what? Why do we do this? Like luckily we still went and visited him, but, so yeah, I don't know if 2020 really, change. I don't know if it changed that much. Got a lot of people I know, they're just like, they just tucked their grandparents away and didn't see them
from that perspective,
for,
probably
for
not.
years before
Yeah.
2020.
Yeah.
But then,
I'd also say one other thought is that we are a really young country, young nation,
Yeah.
and a melting pot. So many cultures would come here, but they would come from some, fairly difficult backgrounds. And the idea of assimilating into this new American culture was really very real for many generations.
Yep.
Right.
And so some of the old way was just naturally lost in the fact that, we're just
That you
so
left.
young. Yeah, because if you're in Europe or Asia or any
Yeah.
of the other places, the 1,000 years of history is right there in front of you.
Yeah.
Right? But it's not here. So
That's
Totally.
a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we don't, our history is just a couple hundred years old.
Right.
It's like, this is from the 18th century. Whoa.
yeah.
Then,
17.
then you go to Europe and it's like, let's see that castle over there. It's like, like 100 AD or whatever.
Totally.
You're like, oh.
Yeah.
I think a lot of films talk about put a focus on the question of what is the value of life, or why are we here, and all that. And like you said, usually it's framed from a younger perspective. This one I feel like was unique. Nomadland is unique in that it's framed from an elder perspective, especially after losing a lot of things.
Yeah.
Spoilers. The movie opens with her losing her town. Basically, she's got to go.
Which is also just a crazy story in itself.
Can
I mean,
someone give a synopsis?
Yeah, sure. The character played by Frances McDormand, we open and she's packing up and leaving town, but the title screen basically says that there was this gypsum manufacturing company in the middle of the desert that was alive for something like 88 years, and then somehow, because of market conditions or whatever, shut down. And so that was the entire livelihood of the town. And after that shut down, the entire zip code was removed from the American zip code system or whatever. So everybody had to leave.
Was that a true story?
I never heard if that part
Yeah.
was true or not.
I think it is true.
Nomadland is based on a book by someone who did this, who traveled, but it wasn't. I don't think it was firsthand autobiography or anything. Yeah, I was gonna look it up too. I forget her name.
We've got our team working on it.
Jessica something.
Yes. So our main character leaves.
We do our
and
research here at Votary.
we see the story through her eyes as she's trying to adapt to this new life on the road. And at first she's not even sure that she can even be on the road. She doesn't have any money. She doesn't have anywhere to go. But the bigger, more significant question that's implicit throughout the film is why? Why do that? What did it all mean? What was my life worth? What is the value of these memories? And
It's interesting. You guys just like take on it is interesting because I didn't get the elder. I wasn't thinking about this whole, elderly issue or anything like that while watching it. Like,
Really?
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking of that.
What was
as the
first
theme.
on your mind?
I was thinking about relationships and marriage
Yeah.
and home, and that was the theme to me.
Yeah.
I mean,
Or those were the themes.
and that's all valid and true. Like that, I think that's one of. So getting into, my opinion of it is I really like it because it's dealing with so much nuance and
Right.
character,
Right.
and like there are all of those themes that are very real,
Yeah.
and it's reflected. I think that's why it's such an amazing story. Is like whatever you resonate with, whatever feels close to home for you, you're going to see it in the movie. If you have the attention span and the willingness to kind of get into it, because it is a little slow.
yeah, I didn't find the story to be amazing, but I did find the filmmaking craft,
Yeah.
to be really powerful, because artistically, the shots are beautiful. The scenes are very, very short. It kept my attention, even though the story is a slow-paced story.
Yeah.
She uses music really well.
Agreed.
You know, she doesn't lean on it like it's a major crutch.
It's
just
pretty much just soft piano music throughout.
Yeah. There's even one scene where she mixes on-set music and the score in 2 different keys. And I was like, what? But it totally worked.
Which scene was that? Was it?
It's
When
3.
the
It's
guy's playing the guitar.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a dude playing a guitar in scene, and there's score playing.
Diegetic and non-diegetic
Yes.
sound.
Yes.
It's been many years. I started out to let go. Finding bits and pieces, all worth every jacket on.
Listeners at home.
And I said not in the same key. We should fact check that.
It was not. I could.
It was not. Right?
Yeah, it was. I can agree with you.
I'm not musical at all. So I
Also,
can't
Well, something
confirm.
can be in a different key and still harmonize.
Yeah, and it's been done plenty of times where, you know, you do mix on set. You know, like in scene.
it was just really
music
subtle.
But
So it
usually
just kinda-
the
And it usually is in key.
usually the in scene or it's trying to evoke a certain mood, and the in scene music becomes irrelevant
right.
as it's taken
Exactly.
over.
That's
with,
kind of
like,
what it.
the,
Yeah.
Yeah, so I usually love that where it's sort of like somebody sort of fading out into their imagination, and like the score comes in, and you're like really taken away
Yeah.
into their world just
Yeah.
through the music, but you're hearing 2 opposing things at the same time. It shouldn't work,
Yeah.
but it does with certain movies.
Yeah.
Not all at once. I was
This
gonna
is the ongoing podcast problem.
Yeah.
say, and now me. I was gonna say the other thing I thought she did really well was the use of like objects and trinkets.
She as the
director, yeah.
Chloe Zhao.
Chloe Zhao.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember how to pronounce her last name. I haven't seen The Rider. You guys have seen The Rider?
Yeah.
Oh,
Nope.
great
Yeah,
film.
I heard it was from you. I
Yeah.
heard it was. But anyways, I thought the use of props in particular, like the movie opens with her looking at clothing from her storage unit.
Oh, and you just know
Yeah.
right away. You know,
Yeah.
does that simple? See, I love the not spoon feeding
Totally.
you. That just you're giving you that moment, and
Totally.
you can just fill in the gaps yourself. That's like a lost art. I feel like
Yeah.
not a lost art, but there's a lot of films that feel the need to like over explain things where it's like we get it. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Like even when she's sharing that cigarette with the drifter and ends up giving him her lighter, he ends up exchanging that later. Like out there in that reduced form of living, those things have value.
Yeah.
And sometimes they
yeah.
harken back to the creature comforts, like even them talking about the toilets. This bucket's the bigger one, and this one's the small, and like stuff like that. I thought they did a good job
Yeah.
with drawing your attention to the creature comforts or lack thereof, or mementos from the past, and what these things mean to us, and how it's connected to life.
Or when he breaks the plates.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my
That's
God,
intense.
I felt that.
Yeah.
I was furious.
That's something about like talk about craft. Like you know that they just had one take, and they just
Oh, they could
held
have
it.
multiple.
I mean, I guess so, but
the way they shot it though is
it
like,
just
really,
felt so
yeah.
like just riveting. Like right there, you're just like,
Yeah.
that just happened right in front of me.
And then you understand how she cares for him,
Yeah.
because he drops the plates and she's like holding it together. But like the rest of the movie, it's like she doesn't have a problem like speaking her mind or showing how she feels, but in that moment she doesn't want to make him feel bad, but she's like, you don't understand what those meant to me. But
Well,
she's
she
trying
yells
to
at him and tells him to go away.
She sends him
keep
away
her-
like a little child.
yeah. But I don't know. She's trying to keep her cool through
She
the
did.
whole
Yeah,
thing. You know
she
what I
did.
mean?
She
Like,
didn't
she
explode.
gets. She definitely gets angry for sure.
Yeah.
But
Interesting.
They
It
have
did-
a great relationship.
It did remind me of a parent, an adult trying to contain a situation by telling a child to go away.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Yeah, it
fun,
did. But to your point, Michael, I really liked how subtle it was throughout in its storytelling. And like you said, the respect for the audience to not spell out everything for you. And it takes me back to there's a Scorsese quote where he says, cinema is about what's in the frame and what's not in the frame.
Yeah.
And what's not in the frame is just as important, just as impactful as what is.
Yeah.
And it was very subtle throughout, to the point where if you weren't paying attention, or say you were just like on your phone or watching this film, you're just kind of looking up, you would just think it was like the same thing the whole time. Like, okay, it's this lady in her van. But there's subtle shifts and changes that happen that does, if you look at it, does constitute a story arc. Like there's a 3-act structure in there, but it's very, like, I almost picture it like if, we have the classic like arc that you draw out that you could trace. And if like, some really dramatic movie was like this big hump, this was like a little like a little hill, but it's there. Like if you pay attention, and that's kind of cool because that's how sometimes our own stories are a lot of times, where it's like, it's not some dramatic thing, but it's like this little shift in this one relationship, like slow.
You said the word earlier, nuance. That is how our life stories are. They have nuance, and they're subtle.
And go ahead.
You go ahead, Jamin.
I'm trying to remember what my point was.
I can say an example of that was the scene at near the end where she's been staying with. Does that guy have a name? The guy that she's.
I think it was
with?
Greg.
Greg, guy who liked her, and he tells her, wants her to stay, and you start to feel like kind of giddy, like, oh, good, like, come on, just stay. Like,
part of you wants there to be a love story.
And then she goes out there. She can't sleep in a bed. She doesn't feel comfortable. She goes back out to her van, sleeps outside. You're like, okay, I understand that. But then that subtly leads into the next morning. She comes in. It's like early. House is empty, and she's just kind of looking at stuff. You're like, oh, she's being curious, whatever. And then she's like leaning on that chair, and then she just leaves the shot. And at first you're like, okay, like next scene. And then she's driving. You're like, oh, like it doesn't hit. Yeah, she left.
Yeah.
It's you.
Yeah. I felt that in that moment. It was like this. She felt like a fish out of water, or just didn't feel like this was her life anymore, and couldn't. She, the idea of assimilating into that was unbearable, and that was tough, because that's what you can feel, the value of what it would be like to rebuild a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And you were just talking about 3-act structure, or like the fact that it's in there. I actually even paused it right halfway through the film. Jai was watching with us, and I said, I knew this was, from a structure point, I knew this was midway. I didn't actually know where we were at in the duration of the film, but it was right when she had to choose whether she was going to go visit him or not.
Yep.
And, the stakes had, as subtle as they were raised to the point where she was she was trying to make that decision, and you could feel the weight of that decision.
Is that your phone?
Oh yeah, I'll turn it down. And then her van broke down, and it got worse.
Okay, that was the
That's the hero's world spiraling into disorder and chaos.
Right.
Yeah.
I think so. What I was going to say earlier is I really liked how what you're saying, Luke. The conflict is so internal, and the stakes. There's so much going on in her head of things that she's battling through. It's interesting visually because there's like the natural elements of surviving in a van out in the desert or whatever. But I think that the real drama of it is her internal like journey of trying to find healing from her not only her husband dying, but her whole town disappearing.
Right.
And so it's like there's so much at stake for her, but it seems like there's not a lot going on.
Yeah.
And also because she's such a quiet internal processor, she doesn't like to reveal what she's going through.
And because you don't get context necessarily for that whole story until later, like when she's visiting her sister.
Yeah.
She talks with her a little bit about it and about her relationship with her husband.
Yeah.
And then I think maybe also in that scene where she sees that guy again with the lighter,
Right.
she talks about her love for him.
Yeah.
And you understand a little bit more why she left, why she's on the road.
And I feel like a story that it maybe isn't as confident in the story that it's telling would probably fall into the trap of trying to reveal everything right away.
Yeah.
Or at least set the stage of her, like, oh, she left when she was really young and she never returned home, and
Yeah.
is she ever
Have
going to be able
flashback
to
scenes.
Yeah, like
Or you could have that same dialogue scene and give that information
Right at the
early
beginning.
on
Yeah,
to be
yeah.
like, here's the context of where our emotional protagonist is emotionally, and
Yeah.
and it's so much better that it's later on, and you're like, you've been sitting with this character, and
Exactly.
it feels like you went on a road trip
I
with
thought
her,
that
and
was
you
smart.
got to know her.
I thought that was smart. The only exposition you needed was in the title card.
Yeah.
And that's it. Just go on
Yeah.
from there.
I actually didn't even think about the title card until you mentioned it, and it made me think about how a lot of the movie I'm thinking that she is just sort of like angry at society and just doesn't really want to be a part of it, and is addicted to the freedom even if it's uncomfortable and all of that. But she was a part of it. She was a homebody and a comfort, a creature of comfort,
of habit.
creature of habit, all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in that scene where she sees her sister and like everything is just like, you realize in that moment, I guess, that she's changed significantly.
Yeah.
You know, she's like judging that lifestyle. And at that point in the movie, I'm completely identifying with her and being like, yeah, it's just everything they're talking about feels so shallow after everything that she's been going through.
Yeah.
It's
Wow.
just-
But there's an interesting side of that as well, because I don't think it's just that she's rejected that life and she like wants nothing to do with society anymore. Like I think she does still miss a little bit of that part of herself that was a homebody, because there's that scene when she's visiting.
She describes her house.
Yeah, she describes her house
Oh,
to
definitely.
that on the porch.
I just
'cause
wasn't.
the first thing
I wasn't thinking about that while watching it, and I just kind of thought of that when you mentioned the title card. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, like that's really what initiated all of this. Like she was totally like solidified in her
Yeah,
life.
because she starts off saying, "Oh, it wasn't
Wasn't
much,"
special,
and
yeah.
then it wasn't special, and then she turns back, it's like, "Well, actually, it was. Like we
That
had
was
this great
a
view."
Key line.
Yeah.
I definitely
Yeah.
noticed that too. It was a key line where
Yeah.
she like corrected herself. And she allowed herself to say what she really felt about it.
Yeah, when the writing is that good and there's so little dialogue, those key lines become
Yeah.
even more important.
I liked how they just moved you through it, where they didn't really give you too much context. It's just like, oh, she's in another job. Oh, she's working here now.
Yeah.
I guess it just shows her in the
Yeah.
next scene. Like
You can figure it out.
you don't really know how long it's been, and it really. I mean, I'm guessing you guys have all done some sort of traveling or trip somewhere, whether it's whether it's a road trip or not. I just felt that same feeling that I've gotten in trips that I've taken, where you kind of forget what day it is, and you kind of forget how long you've been out there, and you're just like meeting random people, and it's like, what is making the whole experience meaningful is hearing all these different perspectives and not knowing what you're going to do tomorrow, and not knowing exactly like where you're going to eat dinner,
Totally.
and all of those things, and it captures that feeling like really well. I hadn't seen a movie do that.
And the interesting thing
while.
about that feeling, and you can only know this if you've been in it, if you've traveled enough like that, is in the moment it doesn't feel that great,
Yeah.
but then later you miss it. At least I do. And when things are all structured, it just like I miss that feeling of freedom and not knowing and spontaneity and
I feel like
adventure
that's
and all
right.
that.
You
That's
can
like
see it.
akin to the adventure. Like it's probably at the core of the adventure you're wanting when you're not in it.
Yeah,
But
There's been moments in my travels that it didn't feel great, but mostly it was I embraced the sort of unknown and really enjoyed it. There was a couple nights though where I remember it was pouring rain and I was like backpacking, and I didn't know where we were gonna sleep, and we didn't have an Airbnb or a place to stay, and then we were in this weird town in like Bolzano, and we literally like took a tram up a mountain. And we're like, we're gonna camp in the rain, and like that was it went from being like I'm kind of like freaked out, like it was the first time where I was like I'm legitimately freaked out. We've been out here for weeks, haven't had a problem, but it ended up being like from that point on was like the best time in like our travels, because we were literally camping on a mountain in like northern Italy. It's like that. What gets better than that? Like, but that moment right before, I was like, I had a moment of like, we don't know we're gonna sleep. I'm gonna sleep in the rain. I don't like this is actually kind of scary. Like, what am I gonna do? It's like, I don't know. Yeah, that feeling of you get where it's totally unknown. You know, you almost see it in her face in the movie that she's like become more comfortable with that than like, I mean, when she couldn't even sleep in her that bed, she went and slept in her van. It's like the van is not more comfortable, but it's like I understand that when I'm watching it. I'm like, I get that. Like you come to see all these elaborate sort of things that we're just so accustomed to as like just overly extravagant and unnecessary. And you want to return to the simplicity.
But there's a conflict in that too, because you see at the beginning how uncomfortable she is to, like, she's not able to pay for that. I don't know if it was a campsite or an RV spot that she was paying for.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, well, this is going to cover you for this week, but what about next week or something like that?
She asked about Amazon.
Yeah, and
They
Amazon's
implied that Amazon pays for it during the holiday workers, because like it was Christmas into New Year, and she was clearly like an add-on holiday worker.
Yeah,
they ramp up for that.
She's like, I'll figure something out. Like, I need to find work, you know.
Yeah,
like that's what she's looking for. Not so much that she wants the adventure, like she wants to have some stability of working, but then it's like a progression, you know, and she learns to love it over the year that she's out there.
Yeah,
and
by this point in the story, where like she's been out there for a while.
Yeah. And it also has to do with community, because she starts off being so uncomfortable because so many people are outside of that lifestyle, and they're saying, "Oh, do you need help?" and stuff, and like she has this pride and she can't accept that. Yeah. But then she finds her community. She goes to that workshop thing or whatever, you know, in the desert, and then she's like, "Oh, these are people who are living the same lifestyle."
Oh, that was the best.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, looking at the IMDb, I knew there were some people who were real people, not actors.
But should we talk about the production?
It looks like most people in the movie, besides just a couple, were non-actors.
Yeah, I imagined, and I don't know if this is how it went down, but I imagined the director set up a scene and had told everybody to mingle, have a fire, say whatever you want to say. Probably just going to walk through with the actor. You know what I mean? Like, it felt like in some of those scenes, mingling scenes, it was just almost no knowledge passed on to the non-actors.
Yeah,
and
or like
they know that they're in a movie being filmed. Some of it feels like, you know, I'd actually like to read the script and know how much was written.
I'd like to read the book to see if that really is how they shot it, because maybe they just have an outline and
that's what I'm
based
saying.
on
like,
the book.
I'm sure from the script we could tell like how much of it is dialogue. There's clearly scenes where there's dialogue that was written and it's important.
Oh,
but
yeah.
There also feels like there's quite a bit that was conversational, documentary style conversational. You know,
I mean, watching it just feels so familiar, because I'm this, you know, watching them get the food at the table with all of the they're walking through an assembly line getting food, and there's no, you know, plot driven dialogue there. It's literally just, oh, you want green beans, like you want, I'm a carnivore, I'm gonna, you know, I want to eat meat. But it felt so natural. Like, I was like, this is something that I've filmed before. Like, when I'm like, okay, you guys get food and I'm going to film you. Like, that's
got to get some B-roll.
What it's like, you know?
The random
like,
little real people lines that slip out.
Yeah, and it's not polished, it's not flashy, but it just gives you that sense of realism. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. There is that scene where they're also all around the fire, and there's people sharing individual stories.
Yeah.
I was watching with my parents, and my mom actually was like, "Those are real people." Like she was watching, she said, "He's like, those are definitely real people." Like she There's something about it that
did
she felt.
know? Did she like know that about the movie?
No,
ahead
but
of
she was
time?
just well, we had seen the writer together, and we knew that was like almost all non-actors. So and she had that context.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's just like something she felt, and you can feel it. You feel
You can, yeah.
it's
That
towing the
was
line
a-
between documentary and film.
That was a moment I was tempted to say it. I was watching it with Nicole, and she didn't know about the non-actor thing, and I wanted to say it, but I was like,
Yeah.
I kind of don't want to take her out of the
Yeah.
It's like
movie
that
for a
Leonardo
moment.
DiCaprio
Because
meme where like points at the
I
TV.
knew I knew ahead of time, right?
That's documentary.
non-actors.
I knew ahead of time while I was watching it, so I was like obsessed with that aspect. Like, wow,
Yeah.
like how much? I was thinking about what you were saying, like the whole movie, like how much of this is scripted, how much of
Yeah.
it is like this is an outline of where the story needs to go, and just let it unfold. How much of it was just completely candid, like
Yeah.
Well, if you break down the stuff that is clearly written, in most cases, it's so centerline in terms of the emotional tone that it really wouldn't be too difficult or out of reach to direct non-actors to be able to do it. Because usually where you spot non-actors breaking down is when tonally they have to achieve something that seems believable, some drama that isn't really the way they would ever know how to do it.
Right. Yeah.
Right? So most of the lines tonally were very down the middle, right? Not too sad, not too happy, not too dramatic. And from that standpoint, it's a great mix. You can weave right in and out of what is documentary style filmmaking, and then here, I need you to say these lines. These are in the script. And then they just practice it a few times and get that tone that feels natural.
I was trying to figure out if that her friend Swanky was an actor or not.
Non-actor.
Really?
I mean, in the credits, it said Swanky played by Swanky.
Well, they struck me as, people who had had some experience with, say, local theater acting, or we worked with a lot of those types in making Silk Trees, where it's like they've been in some productions, but they're not, they're not pros.
Yeah.
And and in some cases, maybe they're just community members that fit the part because that's who they really are.
Yeah, but they have the confidence
that they're like. Yeah. Because even the actors that had some experience, it's like the experience works out in that they can just not look at the camera, or they can be at ease around, in a but. And I don't know. Like, I can't say like I know. I don't know. But it struck me as they seemed like the types that really was cast because that's the character they really are, but they probably have a little bit of experience too. That's just what I assume.
I'm sure when we edit this, we will have done more research on these little things, because I'm realizing, like, I'm surprised I didn't. Some of this I looked up, but I'm like, I want to watch like all the behind the scenes stuff now.
I watched, some stuff.
The only thing that I read.
Did you find anything interesting? What did
I was
you?
gonna say the only thing I read was that they were mostly non-actors. I mean, they're not pros.
Right.
That's what I read.
But yeah, I want to know kind of like that.
What I do know, and same with you. I don't know enough, but what I did find out was that there's actually that nomad community.
Yeah.
And so they're actually most of those people have lived that life that's familiar to them. So my guess, especially like for the fire scene, I think that they were actually recounting things that they missed, or I can't remember. Was it people that they were reflecting on? Anyways, but one key part of it was that the guru guy, what's his name?
Joe or something.
With the white beard,
Yeah.
So he is completely real.
Yeah.
He has a
I
YouTube.
I was sure that was a real gathering that happens, and they just went to it or something.
Yeah, he's had like a YouTube channel for 25
he
years.
has?
Yeah, and he's been teaching people about it for that long. Or no, he hasn't had the YouTube channel. He's been doing it for 20 years.
Gotcha. Yeah.
The YouTube channel for however long YouTube's been around. But
Yeah.
Would you guys
Makes a lot of
ever
sense.
live that nomad life?
For a time, I feel like I have for a time.
Yeah.
Not like so much in a camper, but like I've been on tour, and tour lasts months, and it feels that way.
yeah.
it's funny because I've been on this binge of watching a bunch of YouTube videos about tiny houses and that whole community. And I just find it really interesting. And but it's like, you know, these really nice like tiny houses these people live in, like they build them on the back of a trailer, but it's like really well made materials, and it, you know, they are very specific about how they build it to maximize space, and it's like mostly these young people who are like, oh, we're trying to, you know, live green and like minimize our carbon footprint and have freedom and stuff. And so it's like this very youthful, sexy like side of like the tiny house movement. And then I was like, this is the same thing, but like the other side of it, like these old people who've been cast out by society. So I was like, oh, I don't know, felt a little bit weird, like kind of like dirty after watching like all this more. Yeah,
leave it to young hipsters to.
But there's
to
also
ruin
the
something.
hipster movement that's doing the van life. Too,
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
you know?
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was one thought I had when you guys were talking earlier about just how this is about the elderly and within the context of 2020 and everything. Well, first of all, I was curious, like what 2020 was like for that elderly nomad community, because they're already sort of isolated.
Yeah.
So did they just kind of stick out on the road and be like,
Yeah.
okay, well, we'll just cut
Yeah.
off ourselves
I
from
wonder if their
society even
lives
more?
changed.
What a great question.
Um,
It'd be good to find that out.
And the other thing I was thinking is like when you're watching, you almost get this feeling of like a Tom Sawyer kind of like kids out on like away from home, run away from home, out on their own, detached from society, doing what they want, and like no one can tell them what to do. And so it's like they're elderly, but there's this very like youthful. Their relationships too are very playful and stuff, and so it's an interesting contrast there.
Yeah, I got that vibe too, and it's in a way the Tom Sawyer thing is exploring coming of age themes.
Yeah.
Where you're like, you can't tell me what to do. I'm gonna go do, right, and I'll just go explore, and I'm on my own.
Yeah.
You know, these are young kids, young people that are used to being taken care of by adults.
Yeah.
And in this situation, it's like even when they first got there, the guru was like, we're told to, you know, we worked for the almighty dollar for how many, 50, 60 years. So they're doing that buck the system thing again and doing the I'm on my own.
It's not their parents that they're rebelling against.
No,
it's like society, which
yeah.
is like the big like
Societal
father
norms.
sort of father figure. Yeah.
I've thought for years that like the whole retirement fund thing is like depressing. It's like you not that you're
It's a scam.
saving up money to. That's not like a bad idea or anything.
No, Social Security scam.
But just like you just save up to then just live off of your savings after you worked all of your youth, and to then do what with it when your knees are giving out.
Yeah.
I'm like that, and that's kind of like the normal structure of things, how they're laid out to sort of just fall into place for you. It's just I'm just like that sucks. Like I mean, obviously it doesn't have to, but it's just it I don't know. It's I mean, I don't know if
There's
I go so
something
far to call it
broken
as a scam, but I mean, it is. There
Well,
are companies making a crazy amount of money from that stuff.
I only mean, okay, so just quick sidestep.
I know.
The
It's a
scam, what
whole
I'm
thing.
referring to is just that, you know, the government sold a bill of goods to people and said, hey, pay in over your whole life and we'll take care of you when you're older. But it just didn't work. It just hasn't worked. You know, it's broken, and it's been broken for a long time. It's even worse for the people who are going to be getting into retirement age in the next few years.
I can't
But that's a
remember if
side
it was in the
side
movie
story.
or if there was a.
Oh yeah, she talked about it. She's like, "Oh, I logged in and there was like $400 available or something."
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I watched a video after of an interview with that guru, and he's like, there's all these people who are about to retire, and then if they only have their Social Security, it's going to be like $300 or $400 a month or whatever. It's just not enough to live on.
Right.
So what are they going to do? So
Well,
they go and
it's
get-
also depressing to think that, you know, there's all these people working these jobs that they don't really want to be working, just so they can finally not work.
Yeah.
When they're going to have most likely the lowest energy, and their bodies are falling apart. And then it's like, now I'm free to spend my savings and do what I want with my time. And I just think about that, and I'm like, I would hope that I'm going to live in a way that I'm never going to want to stop working, because what I'm doing, I enjoy, and it's a part of me. But that's not the way things are really set up for people. So it's like it's just a given that you don't want to work anymore. It's like, we're guessing you don't want to work anymore because you hate your job, right? So then now you can finally live off of the money to go golfing or whatever.
Well, and maybe the most depressing part of that whole thing is that it's just framed all around money.
Yeah.
Is that it's just like, oh, you have to have money to live. Well, yeah, but what about all the other things you want to do with your life? Like, maybe those are more important than money.
Well, and what are you going to do
And they are.
sitting around spending money? There's just we just imagine that we're like it's I don't know, like you would assume like that you're just like there's a million things you could think of and be super satisfied, and like that's gonna be like that's gonna be really living, right? 65 and they got like hundreds of thousands in the bank. All right, it's like, well, what?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like you're better off going on a road trip.
All of a sudden, you're just gonna switch straight from like work into relax. You're not gonna know what to do.
Exactly. That's what that seems to be the theme that I hear from people who enter into retirement, and then they might go out of it, or they find some crazy hobby to get into or something, because it's like, well, you gotta do something, especially just really hardworking blue collar people.
Yeah.
You're not gonna just shut off. You're not gonna just be, and I don't know.
Well, that's the whole premise behind the back cover of the book that I just wrote, is that it feels like you see one of two situations. One, people are working so hard for money that they're locked in that, and they can feel some fulfillment in it, but they're just so locked in that they wake up when they're 50 something or 60 something, and they say, what did I do? Like, it was all that. Or the other way around, the other extreme, is that people are they don't care about the future.
Yeah.
They're so in the moment
Yeah.
that they make no investments, and they wake up when they're 60 and say, why didn't I do X, Y, and Z, right?
Yeah.
Those are the two extremes, but there is a way to think in the future and live in the now.
Mm-hmm.
There is, and that's it's challenging. It's a
all
daily challenge.
about balance.
Yeah. Well, I look at it like story. Like you are thinking of a story this life story that you want to live, but the chapter is now. So what do you have to do right now for that overall story?
Just really want
Right.
to live Taxi Driver. So what can I do
That's
now?
I know the end to the story.
Where am I in the story of Taxi Driver?
There's some things you can do now.
You talking to me?
Gets out of shavers.
Jodie Foster.
Dude, it's actually kind of creepy with that movie.
It's totally
isn't
creepy.
she like 13 or something?
It's scary.
It's
how
actually
little,
like
how young
probably
she is.
not okay.
Probably not.
Moving back to Nomadland. What did you guys think of the ending?
I remember.
She goes back to the town,
Yeah.
Yep.
and where everything started, and you finally get to see the house.
You see the view she
You
described.
see the view that she described, and she walks out of the house, and it's just that nice centered wide shot, just cut to black.
I think
That's it.
Isn't it a shot of the van going down the road?
Yeah,
Ends
and
on-
then it cuts to the
Then
shot
it-
of the
okay,
van. Yeah.
Yeah.
Big difference.
So if it had ended on just a shot of her at the house, I think I would have been a
Depressing.
little bit more sad.
I
But the
don't
fact that-
remember the last shot. Then
Yeah.
I remember it differently. I don't
'Cause
know why.
I still
I kept
was
waiting
a little
for
bit.
the last shot. I thought that there's so many shots I thought was going to be the last shot.
Yeah, just apart from like analyzing it story wise and stuff, like I was still just like feeling sad that she had left that guy and that she just abandoned him. I was like, oh, come on.
I had some of that.
Mm.
I had a little bit of that. Like, it's a little too, philosophically, I was like, it's a little too focused on the, I just can't do it. I just can't do it.
Yeah.
Instead of the, I'm going to try.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that would have been more hopeful for me. I know people would be like, well, that's not interesting.
Yeah.
Right. Whatever. But, I am glad that they ended not with the shot in
Yeah.
the house. It did make sense that she went to the house, because to me it was kind of making not making in a way like making peace with with just with all the past, and then
Well,
she's
yeah, we
moving
don't
on.
know actually
Yeah.
if she goes and is with him. So that's what I
Yeah,
like.
maybe.
That's
like
the
that
one
it's
thing
open.
I
I like
thought
that
was
it's open.
brilliant. I thought it was brilliant about the ending shot on the road because it left that like I was thinking about it afterwards. I was like, oh, was she going back to see him? Like,
Right.
did she just need to go
Yeah.
just to have
Right.
closure, and now she's returning?
And the
Probably
last
not,
couple
but-
lines.
Well, you could have teased that, and
Yeah.
the storyteller could have teased that, and then
Yeah.
I would have felt a little better about it.
Mm-hmm.
When the dude is talking about, well, I'll see you down the road, and giving his whole, I mean,
Mm.
it kind of sets it up to be
That's
like,
true.
oh,
Yeah.
whoever that person is that you're missing, you'll see them down the road. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so it kind of is whatever you want it to be, I guess, and that's I like that. I like when I don't know. I enjoy when this style of story is left kind of ambiguous and open, and you're like not necessarily like what did it all mean, but like
Yeah.
it's not that type of thing, but just whatever you would kind of imagine for her future, it now can start because she's sort of closed that chapter. Because the whole time she's just carrying around that wound,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and then she finally needs to sort of go back, and then she can move forward. And it's almost like, now the real story starts kind of thing. It has that feeling of like I had a very similar feeling to when Boyhood ended. When I watched Boyhood,
Yeah.
where I was like, I want to see the next, what happens next. Like
Boyhood
I
2.
exactly. Like I'm like
Manhood.
like exactly. I'm like I want to see. Like I just sat through a 3-hour movie, but I want to see the rest. I mean, Nomadland
that-
really wasn't that long.
What was the last shot of Boyhood?
It's actually a trilogy, and then it's in the nursing home.
Yeah.
The third one.
Oh God.
And he's gonna take Richard Linklater's gonna be like 90 years old by the time he finishes it because he's gonna shoot it all real
Richard
time.
Linklater would have done a good job with Nomadland as well. I mean, I thought the direction was beautiful.
They're two
but-
peas in a pod.
Yeah, he would have added in
You
some
think?
other like
I
weird
feel like
characters.
they're so different, but I do like both.
Yeah, I mean, I will say
The spirit of it.
cinematography of Nomadland was really, really, really well done.
I guess
Yeah.
it's just a like preference thing because Chloe kind of loves that like beautiful artistic thing, but Richard Linklater kind of prioritizes a bit more of like a quirky fun vibe.
Oh, and you mean the tone of
Tone.
the film?
Tone.
Yeah.
I don't know about quirky fun. It's a lot of his stuff, yeah, for sure. I would say more of philosophy and conversation, and less so.
Yeah,
like
so that's
artsy.
the mutual. But then I feel, they're both talking about these philosophical time. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I think if
Yeah.
Linklater had done it, there would have been scenes like really extended dialogue conversations because that's how
Probably.
he writes. Whereas these were like just snippets.
it's just
a
that
little-
feeling like
yeah.
I just made friends and now I'm never going to see him again. That's
Yeah.
kind of what it is. It's like there's that real connection that you have with these characters, and you're like, I want to stay.
Heard so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. But yeah, I ended up, I don't know, I had that moment of like, sort of like, what? That's it?
Yeah.
But then as I sat with it and reflected I was like, oh, I actually got a lot out of that, and I'm glad they ended it that way. I
Yeah.
don't want that like, oh, like I don't want that from this character.
See, that's interesting that you got there. I'm not referencing that film in particular. I still have to see it. But I don't often, I can't get there in reflection that far. I usually need to be left the way that I feel with it. Now I will reflect and think about things that I liked or didn't like throughout the film, but the way that it leaves me is usually the way I'm left.
Yeah. Yeah. Ending defines the whole experience. It's like retroactive.
Yeah.
Some movies, the ending seems to change with you the more times you watch it. Like, so you ever watch
Yeah,
a movie and you're
That's
like,
true.
I hated that ending, and then you watch the movie again later on, you're like, oh snap, like that was brilliant.
We were just in reverse. We were just talking the other day, a few times about The Game, and
Yeah.
that I loved it, the ending when I was young, and now I'm like,
That's funny.
feels a little bit like shock for shock's sake.
Except for
or just
certain movies that just kind of they just stay the same age.
Yeah, they're so good.
Oh my god.
Like Heat.
Oh, that's a great movie.
Every time you watch it, it's
Great,
like,
great.
I've only
great
seen it
movie.
once.
Yeah.
seen it
Oh.
twice.
Definitely a good movie though.
It's like a modern,
Very different.
Shakespeare epic. Like,
Yeah.
It is.
It's so great. But what you're saying about endings, yeah, I think they're so important for storytelling and filmmaking. It's like last shot is like there's so much weight to it,
Yeah.
and you ever get that feeling you're watching a movie and you're like you got this, like it holds on a bit longer. Like, oh, is this the last shot? Like, are they gonna end here? Like, oh, and sometimes it's like, yes, please do. Like, this would be perfect. Other times it's like, no, like not here.
Yeah.
Like we need more. And then it like cuts to black. You're like, ah.
There's such an art in how to fade
Yeah,
out.
I think there's nothing better than like a cut to black, just like a straight, like a still moment, cut to black. Like so for me, there's
if
just
the-
something
It
magical about
depends,
that.
man.
Yeah.
It totally
Tone,
it totally depends
It
on the
does,
feeling
yeah.
you
If
want.
the tone and the pace needs it, I love it. If
Yeah.
it needs a fade out,
Dude, the
I'm all
end of
about that
Return of
too.
the King, that fade, if that cut to black, you'd be like,
What's the
again,
very
that'd be
last shot of-
so jarring after
Yeah.
all these fades. All you know what I mean? Like,
What's
all
the
these,
last shot of Return of the King?
Is it the
It's
ships?
the door, man. It's the Hobbit door.
The Hobbit door. Yeah,
Hobbit
that's
door.
true.
Cut to black.
That
You'd be
was
like,
a good-
"Ah!"
yeah, yeah.
You know, or No Country for Old Men. We've talked about this ending because it's very jarring. Where it's just that conversation, you're like, this is definitely not going to be the last scene of the movie. I mean, come on.
Yeah, and
And then he just and then he describes his dream, and then I woke up, cut to black. It's perfect because it's literally like
Yeah.
it's like you're waking up from the movie
So annoying.
and it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my god, what? And that was a good example for me. Of the first time I saw it, I did not like that ending at all because I didn't understand what they were going for. And then I watched it again and again and again, and now I'm like, that's one of the best endings of any film I've ever seen because it's so unexpected and it's the perfect way to end that story.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that just a random conversation that kind of ties things up emotionally for the main character in a cut to black would be perfect in any movie, obviously. But
yeah, and what you're saying, Jed, about like the ending is what you're left with, and it defines the whole experience. And I think in story, the ending, like I said, has a retroactive effect on the meaning of all the different points of the rest of the story.
yeah,
It's like
your
there's this
mind
line-
goes, what it
It reinterprets everything.
Right. So
that
this
you
is what you were
saw
trying
before.
to say.
Because and it makes me think of there's this quote from The Great Divorce by C.S. Lewis where he's like having this conversation. He's the character is this guy who's like, basically it's this mythological journey from hell into heaven. He's having a conversation with this person who's in heaven, and he's telling him about the difference between those who are in heaven and those who are in hell, like the saved and the damned. And he says, like, for the saved, they look back on their life on earth, and it's the experience is like a reverse mirage. He says, where they thought like a mirage, usually you think you see water, you go to it, and then it's just a desert, it's nothing.
Yeah.
It's a reverse of that, where you thought it was just dry desert, and you look back after now being like in heaven, and you see that there are actually wells of water there.
Wow.
And then he says, like, for those who are like in hell, it's the same. Like they end up in this state where of like self-inflicted suffering kind of, and they interpret even their greatest joys on earth. They look back and they're like, they scorn it, and they're like, that was terrible. So I don't, just that idea of endings
Wow.
reinterprets like
Powerful.
the experience. Yeah.
That's pretty profound.
Yeah, I think that is probably
Selah.
what's happening in a small way in our mind. Like you're right when the end of a story hits you, it's just like that's where everything is coming in.
Yeah. That's why people get so worked up or mad about a good or a bad ending.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I think it seems like you are saying in a way like I want the storyteller to make their point and make it clear and that have that impact me. And there's a certain type of story where it's like the closure is so satisfying, and then you get that like that moment.
Yeah.
And then there's a certain other type of story where things are left more ambiguous, or depending on the characters, where you kind of have to sit with it for a while to even know what you feel, because that initial feeling can be jarring, where you're like, I'm not getting the resolve, or like I'm not getting the clear message, or like if I'm left being like, what was the filmmaker trying to say? Initially, that can be frustrating, but upon further reflection, you're like, well, I'm thinking about it a lot, and it's struck. Like David Lynch is perfect with that, like very surreal, like very unsatisfying endings as far as like a classical story goes. But you're left thinking and discussing his movies for your whole life, and he'll never give you what the answer is. And I think that's beautiful, because you're like, well, now there's way more kind of emphasis on different interpretations, and there's no one singular, this is what it is.
Is it beautiful, Mike? Or is it
what?
just flat out ugly?
What?
Lynch?
I love David Lynch.
I haven't seen
not a
enough of
fan.
his movies to know.
Not a fan.
What about Inception and the spinning?
Well, that I
It's
thought was
kind of
obvious.
like
I thought that was obvious.
that
what
idea
happened.
of wanting things to be unsatisfying, so you talk about it, but so like obvious, like here, talk about the ending. It's like it's spoon feeding, like. But
Do you what with Inception?
Yeah.
Well, I thought Inception was obvious. It wiggles. To me, that like says everything.
Okay.
Okay, now I don't have a strong opinion either way. Yeah, I think you're probably right.
I have a strong feeling about not talking about it.
Because he wants us to talk about it.
Yeah, if we
We're not-
talk
we're
about
not
it, we
going-
fall into his trap.
We're not gonna.
It's just what he wants.
Oh, I really want to watch David Lynch movies, and let's talk about those, because even if everyone hates them, it's something.
will definitely do that.
Really, it will make you want to talk about it, even if you hate it. It'll get a reaction.
I agree. I agree with you in the sentiment of it. I don't know if I agree with you to the extreme, but I notice sometimes there's movies that I just am not particular
a movie
about the
can have
ending.
an arbitrary ending, and it can not work. It's
Right,
if
right,
you can
right,
pull it off, it can be a beautiful thing. But it also can just be a like middle finger to the audience.
Yeah, which that I don't like. But just giving something to. I think that when there's a movie that I think about for 3 or 4 days after, that's usually when I know maybe I didn't love it right after finishing it, but then if I keep thinking about it,
Right.
then I start to realize, oh, there was something about that really impacted me because I'm still thinking about it. I haven't just let it go. Sometimes I'll just let things go, and it's like, oh, that was a movie, and I watched it, and now I'm done.
I think that's important for like making a piece of art. If you're just making something and you have something very important to say, and then you just pile a bunch of things on top of it so no one gets the message, then you probably messed up. But if you're kind of not looking to do that and not having this is the message, then it's like you want to just let people figure it out themselves.
I definitely don't think it's right to spoon feed, but I think that you can go too far with leaving things just way too wide open, and that's David Lynch to me. David Lynch has reminded me of someone that like pretentious art students need to feel like they're in some special club where they're like, oh, it's just so, you have to interpret it. And when really it's like the Emperor's New Clothes, they've fallen victim to exclaiming about the Emperor's New Clothes. There's nothing there. And I'm like, that's how it feels to me. It feels so shallow and so like he's using all kinds of craft in a great way. Like he's good with craft to tell nothing stories.
Maybe
to tell
there's
meaninglessness.
Well, it's not. It's whatever it means to you.
Come at us.
It just doesn't mean anything to you, so therefore it's not meaningful.
I mean, that's been my own experience. Like if I'm not saying that someone else couldn't experience something different. Obviously, you have.
Well, I'm thinking about like Mulholland Drive or about maybe less ambiguous Blue Velvet.
I didn't see Blue Velvet.
Or Eraserhead.
I'm remembering how I felt.
Eraserhead is pretty weird.
Lost
ending.
Highway.
I've never seen Lost Highway.
It's garbage.
I started watching Twin Peaks.
Yeah, Twin Peaks is a great example.
And the first couple episodes, I was so interested.
Well, Twin Peaks is a long show that was in the 90s, and then they made a whole
Yeah,
nother long.
I bet you
new
there's
seasons.
actual story structure in those.
There is,
Yeah.
but there's also a lot of abstract stuff.
Do you guys ever watch he has a YouTube channel now, and it's just him giving the weather in Los Angeles every single day. For almost all of 2020, there's a YouTube video of him giving the weather. It's like, today,
I know.
clear skies, sunny, 79 degrees. And that's it.
That's great.
It's so funny because Nomadland is so grounded. I don't know how we ended up talking about
Yeah,
David
we got
Lynch.
talking
just
about
ambiguous
endings.
endings. Yeah.
And it's not even like a very dramatic ending that
No,
people are going
it's
to be talking
not.
about. We've got down this rabbit hole.
But it's subtly, it's very, very subtly ambiguous where you're like, I'll get from that whatever I sort of am feeling in what I am sort of predicting for this character.
Yeah,
I think that's cool.
I appreciated that. Like, that's not so far in the ambiguous where I'm just left like this one's.
Lost Highway,
I
I've
could
heard,
feel-
is really dark. So you're probably I haven't seen it, but you're probably remembering that and going, okay, David Lynch is a psycho.
Back to David Lynch.
You know what? Fair enough. He's
I haven't
pretty
seen
weird,
all
but-
of Mulholland Drive, but it wasn't.
You haven't seen all of it?
I think I walked out on that one.
How can you talk
you
about
did?
ambiguous endings if you haven't seen that?
Well, I didn't talk
bummer.
about that one.
Bummer.
Ambiguous ending.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I really want to talk about Mulholland Drive. I think it's really worth talking
Well,
about.
one of these days.
I mean,
I value my time.
I might be the only.
But-
I might be the only one who. Likes
What
that
was the
movie,
biggest
but-
thing that you guys all got? What were you expecting from Nomadland, and then what did you get from it? Positive or negative?
I was expecting a road trip movie that had scripted people and non-scripted people, and I knew Frances McDormand was going to be awesome. And I was listening to a podcast that brought it up, and I shut off that podcast because I decided in that moment that I
smart.
wanted to see it, and then it really it way surpassed my expectations. Like everything I've said, like I wasn't expecting it to give me all those feelings, and I think it's such a hard thing to do, to communicate things with film that are subtle vibes and feelings that you didn't even know you could relate to, and I think it did that really, really well.
I agree.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I want to watch it again. I should have watched it again right before this. I want to see it again.
I agree. I believed there would be some fairly deep philosophy, but not presented in any heavy-handed way. I knew it would be nuanced and subtle, or at least I believed it would be, and it was. I heard from you that she does well with natural lighting and natural cinematography, so I was expecting that, and I was very impressed. I really liked it a lot. And I thought the cinematography was also bold, and that they would. She was okay with just stuff that many cinematographers would be like, "What? No, I can't see their faces." You know, like it's like dark stuff and no third point lighting or no just natural available light. You know, but doing really well with morning and golden hour stuff that wasn't too golden. The desert had beautiful colors.
Oh my gosh!
So it's just really working with those.
Very muted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed it just from a cinematography study, as well.
Me too.
But I was expecting it for it to be slower than it was. Funny enough, what drives me crazy is if a slow film has long scenes.
Yeah.
Really long, slow, drawn out scenes, and they did really well with using a lot of scenes very short.
Mm-hmm.
So there's still movement
Yeah.
to the story, even though it's subtle. I just thought that was it's a really good edit study
Yeah.
on how you can take very little overall plot or story and put it in that amount of time, but still pace it in a way where you don't let go.
Yeah.
You shouldn't see the Turin horse then, Jed, if you don't like long, slow scenes. This movie where it's
actually
like
love
5 minutes.
I actually love long scenes
Yeah.
where great things happen in
Yeah.
them, like 1917, which is maybe the most
Yeah.
biggest version of that, or yeah,
Have you ever seen A Ghost Story?
no,
Oh,
The pie scene. Is what
Oh my
that's
gosh.
so friggin' long.
Yeah.
It's so
very-
good though. Not a lot
Yeah.
happens, but it
exhausting.
means a lot in the story.
Yeah, it
like
does.
you watch this woman eat like a whole pie,
Pretty much. 'Cause
and you're just
she's-
like, what?
like-
what is this?
Legit one shot of her sitting on the floor for like 12 minutes.
yeah.
And she eats a whole pie, and
It's
then she
just-
vomits.
It actually wasn't a script. She just started eating, and
That wasn't in the script?
They just rolled.
Come
Oh
on,
my
are you serious?
No.
And then she takes a bite.
Yeah.
And they just keep rolling.
They were trying to get other work done. She just started eating that pie. Anyway, sorry, I got us off track. I would say I was expecting, I knew it was going to be a story about like outcasts of society and like a look at this strange sector of people who are, kind of old and living in vans and stuff. And it was definitely a really interesting examination of that community and people who are in that situation. And I really liked a lot of the themes that they touched on. Kind of Mike mentioned at the beginning, the like death and community, home, all these different things. It ended up, just being a very human story.
Yeah, it has that classic saying, "Homer's where the heart is." It kind of like reinforces that in a really kind of poetic way.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
4 recommends. I recommend.
I think that's a thumbs up on old Nomadland. It's a 94% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Is it
It's,
94?
10 out of 10 or 4 out of 4 here at Votary Films.
Yeah.
So with that, that's episode, 18? I don't even know.
I think so.
Nomadland episode.
Right on.
Unless you guys have anything else you wanted to add.
That's a wrap.
No, I mean, no
Get
one
outta
asked me
here.
my question back, but that's okay.
What was your question back?
Oh, nothing. I think
No,
we
I
all
wanna
forgot.
What did you take?
What is it?
I said that's a wrap.
But it's not unless if you have
It
something
is
else.
when I say it's a wrap.
Well, what did you say?
What was your question?
No, what you expected and what it was. For
Yeah.
you.
That was a great
thought we-
question. by the
I
way.
thought it was a good question, but then
You're supposed to just answer your own
Well,
question.
you guys just kind of moved on to the wrap, and so I
cut it back
Sorry, I
in.
thought you-
Oh, thanks,
you
guys.
answered. I
I-
thought you
I
answered. What
supported.
did
Okay, all
What did
right,
you
all right.
feel?
Thanks for asking. I felt like I was expecting the cinematography for sure. I agreed. I think that I really resonate with her style of filmmaking, which is just it's fly on the wall, quote unquote, but there's actually a tremendous strength in being able to capture reality in an authentic way that doesn't feel forced. And then if you guys looked at the credits, she was the writer, director, and editor. She edited her own movie.
Wow.
And I think that, like Jed, you're saying, the editing just is pretty masterful.
Yeah.
Like, you can feel it. But I wasn't really expecting to get that emotional, like, kind of almost like conviction or like eyes opening, like, whoa, like this is kind of like people are doing that because they feel outcast or they feel forgotten or whatever. So, and Gracie and I watching it together, you know, we're able to kind of reflect on our own families and stuff. So I wasn't expecting that. And I think that was, you know, profound for me. Overall, maybe not like the greatest movie I've seen, but it was good. It was good.
What you just said. Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna muse. I was just say it made me want to do bigger, badder, bolder things the older I get to stay
Yeah.
in people's faces.
Yeah. Totally.
Made me want to travel in a van. The next podcast we do about a movie, I think should be about Our Friend, which came out in 2019, and that was a recent
Who's Our Friend?
experience. The movie's called Our Friend.
I want
I
Our
don't
Friend.
even know the director. It's got Casey Affleck. It's really, it's really good. But I had a lot of reflection on that one. That will get you just really just processing your whole life, and it captures like real life moments. And it's bordering on almost like, okay, this is like too sad, but it's really it's really impactful. And I feel like, I mean, there has not been a movie that I've felt like represented like a meaningful story like that I've seen in a long time. So I feel like that should be the next one.
Okay.
So if you guys are, that was a 2019 movie that kind of fell into. I think people were like
Under the Cracks.
Yeah, it's like
Under the
2020
radar?
happened. People are like, I'd rather not watch
depressing movie.
this
sad.
super sad like friends with cancer like get it's just it's intense.
If you feel depressed from this podcast, just leave a podcast about what part made you depressed.
And head on over to our sponsor.
insert sponsor here.
See you later.